Before I talk about Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, there's some things I need to talk about. I have to talk about Hideo Kojima. Kojima is one of the best directors in gaming history, and he created the Metal Gear series, serving as the director for many of the games. Now that I've mentioned Kojima, there's something else I need to talk about. I skipped a game. Technically. Between the events of Metal Gear Solid 3 and Peace Walker was the events of Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. Portable Ops, released in 2006, follows Big Boss after the events of Snake Eater in 1970. The game was not directed by Kojima, and its canonicity isn't entirely clear. The game is referenced at the beginning of Peace Walker, but aside from that, it has very little impact on the overall story of Metal Gear Solid. Peace Walker had the same team working on it that Metal Gear Solid 4 did. Kojima also directed it, making its canonicity 100% clear. Now to explain how I'm covering the MGS series. I'm going MGS 3, MGS Peace Walker, Metal Gear Solid 5, Metal Gear 1 and 2, which are part of the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection, Metal Gear Solid 1, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Metal Gear Solid 4. I'm going in story order rather than release order. So, Peace Walker. Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker began development after the release of Metal Gear Solid 4. Originally developed under the name Metal Gear Solid 5 Peace Walker, the story is extremely important to the story of Big Boss. Originally it released on PSP in 2010, and later it came to PS3 and Xbox 360. The PSP and PS3 version have an interesting feature where they can swap save data between the two. Due to originally being developed and released on PSP, most of Peace Walker's cutscenes are done in a motion comic style rather than 3D animation. Anyway, some context before we get on to the story. Several years after the events of Operation Snake Eater, Snake, Ocelot, Major Zero, Eva, Paramedic, and Sigint all founded a secret organization with the goal of fulfilling the will of the boss. This organization would be called Cipher. The vision within Cipher would begin with a disagreement regarding the actual will of the boss. Snake believed the boss wanted a world where soldiers weren't used as disposable tools by their government, and instead their talents were respected. Zero believed in bringing world peace via control over the world. Zero also wanted to use Snake as an icon for the organization because of his legendary soldier status thanks to Operation Snake Eater. When Zero realized he wouldn't be able to control Snake and use him as an icon for Cipher, he decided to begin a project to clone him. This project would be known as Les Enfants Terribles. When Snake discovered the project, he left Cipher out of disgust. Now to the story of Peace Walker. 10 years after the events of Snake Eater is now 1974, and Snake, alongside his friend Kaz Miller, are running a private army called Militaires Sans Frontières, or MSF, in Colombia. MSF is an army without a nation, and fights for the highest bidder, whether that be a country or an individual. At the start of Peace Walker, Snake and MSF are based out of a beach in Colombia. Snake is still struggling with the trauma from Operation Snake Eater, and he rejects the title of Big Boss, preferring his soldiers call him Snake or Vic Boss. He also has a scar on his chest resembling the one the boss had. Snake and Miller are approached by Ramon Galvez, a teacher for the United Nations University for Peace, and his student, Paz. Galvez wants to hire Snake and MSF to investigate a potentially CIA-backed army that is occupying parts of Costa Rica. Due to Costa Rica's peace constitution, the country cannot create an army and has no other choice but to hire MSF for protection. Snake initially refuses to help, believing Galvez is KGB, but after Paz plays a tape that appears to feature the boss alive, Snake agrees to investigate. MSF is provided with an offshore oil rig to be the mother base for the organization, and Snake is sent to Costa Rica to investigate. Arriving in Costa Rica, Snake makes contact with the Sandinista Liberation Army. The Sandinistas are led by a woman named Amanda. Amanda's father was the leader of the Sandinistas, and after his death, Amanda assumed command. Unfortunately for Amanda, her troops do not fully accept her as their leader yet. Another important member of the Sandinistas is Amanda's little brother, Chico. Chico wants to prove himself as a soldier, however others don't take him seriously due to his age. Snake and the Sandinistas are attacked by soldiers and robot weapons called Peace Sentinels. In the fight, Amanda's leg is broken, and Chico is taken by one of the Peace Sentinels. Snake uses a Fulton recovery device to send Amanda back to Mother Base and goes to find Chico. Snake finds Chico in a small village and has a short conversation with him before he's extracted through a Fulton. Snake continues through the jungle and comes across a lab. Inside the lab are two individuals. A man named Hot Coleman, who is a CIA director and is in charge of the forces occupying Costa Rica, and a paraplegic weapons engineer. Coleman and the engineer are arguing, and the argument ends with Coleman pushing the engineer down a flight of stairs.
Unless we prove we're capable of launching, Peace Walker is useless as a deterrent. You used me! We used each other. I'll get my old director's job back at headquarters, and you'll finally be able to walk tall among your colleagues.
I won't let you get away with this!
How unfortunate. Guess I'll just have to take your legs for myself.
After Coleman walks away, Snake goes to help the engineer get up. The engineer frantically warns Snake that Coleman is going to launch a nuke.
He's gonna do it! He's gonna launch a nuke!
Snake chases after Coleman and ends up in a large arena. As he steps into the arena, a large bipedal mech is being lifted off the ground. Snake is then attacked by an unmanned tank resembling the Shagohod. During the battle, the engineer uses the facility's intercom to tell Snake how to defeat the tank he refers to as the Pupa. Following Snake defeating the Pupa, the engineer introduces himself as Huey Emmerich. Huey explains that the Pupa was one of a series of unmanned weapons he designed for Coleman. First was the Pupa, then Chrysalis, then Kakuna, and finally PeaceWalker. All of these weapons are operated by artificial intelligence rather than human pilots. Huey also explains the concept of nuclear deterrence theory to Snake, and that he can't walk because his father was part of the Manhattan Project and the radiation exposure caused him to be born with a deformed spine, preventing him from walking.
Put simply, nuclear deterrence is the idea of using nukes to keep nukes in check. If one side launches nuclear weapons, the other is sure to launch theirs in retaliation, which makes launching an act of suicide. In the end, neither side can use its nukes.
My father worked on the Manhattan Project. He put his whole life into that research. And all it created was this illusion of peace called deterrence. And then I was born, unable to walk. I had no choice but to face up to the nukes.
Huey tells Snake that the designer of PeaceWalker is a woman named Dr. Strangelove, and she is based out of her own lab further into the jungle. Snake offers for Huey to join MSF as part of the research and development team, and Huey accepts. After Huey joins MSF, the player gets the option to develop their own Metal Gear called Zeke for MSF's defense. The player receives parts for Zeke by damaging certain parts of the AI weapons during boss fights. Metal Gear Zeke develops in the background while the story continues. Snake continues through the jungle, making his way to the lab where the designer of PeaceWalker's AI is located. Snake finds Dr. Strangelove, who wants to know the truth behind the boss's death. Strangelove worked with the boss as part of a NASA project, and like many others, grew to admire her. When Strangelove learned of the boss's death, she refused to believe the CIA's story of her betraying her country. She is convinced that she can learn the truth from Snake, but Snake himself tells her that the boss was a traitor. It's clear that Snake is in denial himself about the truth behind the boss's betrayal. Strangelove brings Snake into her lab and introduces him to the AI that powers PeaceWalker. The AI is an exact replica of the personality of the boss. Essentially, PeaceWalker itself is the boss.
Is someone there?
We have a visitor. I'll introduce him. Don't try anything foolish. As long as we're in here, I can reduce you to carbon at the press of a button.
The AI pod housing the boss AI is referred to as the mammal pod. Snake is knocked out, and when he wakes up, he is attacked by Chrysalis, the second of Huey's AI weapons. Chrysalis is a large drone with a railgun. I need to mention that during the AI boss fights, a strange song plays. This song adds an unsettling feeling to the AI weapons and gives them the impression that they are essentially alive. Following the Chrysalis battle, Snake continues towards a lab based out of an old mine. Arriving at the quarry where the mine is located, Snake fights the last of Huey's AI weapons, Kakuna. Kakuna is a building-sized tank that can shoot in multiple directions at once. Snake infiltrates the base and gets inside of the AI pod housing the boss AI. Snake asks the AI if it remembers Operation Snake Eater. When the AI responds with no knowledge of the mission, Snake tries to destroy it. But right as he's about to start shooting, the AI pod opens. Coleman, Strangelove, and several troops surround him. Coleman reveals that PeaceWalker is meant to re-establish the United States' nuclear superiority that had been lost because of the Cuban Missile Crisis and later arms treaties.
At an American destroyer. In retrospect, that man was a hero. He saved the world from all-out nuclear war. Humans are incapable of destroying themselves.
But an AI wouldn't hesitate to push the button.
Precisely. Making it the one real deterrent.
People hesitate, lose their nerve. Isn't that why deterrence theory works in the first place?
No. Machines don't make mistakes. Only men do. That's why a fully automated, mechanized deterrent like PeaceWalker is needed.
Alongside that, Coleman had been the orchestrator of Operation Snake Eater. Snake tries to fight the soldiers, but is knocked out. Hours later, Snake wakes up hanging from the ceiling, Dr. Strangelove in front of him. She demands that he tell her whether the boss was actually a traitor or if she sacrificed herself to protect the US. She also tells Snake that the mammal pod is not complete and she needs the truth behind Operation Snake Eater to complete the programming. Strangelove uses 2 electric rods to torture Snake. Fun fact, in the Japanese version, Strangelove tortured Snake with tickle torture. This was done to get a lower Sero rating. Snake refused to tell Strangelove the truth, only repeating that the boss was a traitor.
Who was a traitor?
And betray her country. What really happened? What did you see?
She betrayed more than just her country.
Strangelove points out that if the boss was a traitor, why would Snake give himself a scar identical to the boss's?
That bandana. Why keep a memento of a traitor?
What are you talking about?
And what about that scar?
Following Strangelove's interrogation, Snake is thrown into a cell. Snake is able to escape the cell by cutting through the lock using a razor wire hidden in his scar. When Snake escapes the facility, Miller radios to him telling him that Paz and Galvez have disappeared. Suspecting Coleman could have taken Paz, Snake searches for Coleman and finds him with a captured Paz. Coleman reveals that Strangelove was able to complete the mammal pod, thanks to being able to deduce what happened from interrogating Snake. Coleman also reveals that PeaceWalker's first nuke target will be the MSF Mother Base. If Coleman succeeds in launching PeaceWalker and hitting Mother Base, the trade winds will send the nuclear fallout across Central America, destroying crops, killing livestock, and essentially making the region uninhabitable. Coleman escapes with Paz, and PeaceWalker attacks Snake. Coleman believes that holding an MSF client hostage will scare MSF and Snake into not interfering with PeaceWalker's launch. Following a short fight, PeaceWalker goes into quadrupedal mode and begins moving towards its launch location. Snake chases after on horseback. This horse is the same horse that belonged to the boss. How a horse left in Soviet Russia managed to get to Central America is anyone's guess. During the chase, Snake and the horse fall down a hill. Snake is fine, but the horse is fatally wounded. Snake puts the horse out of its misery in a scene directly referencing the boss's death. Snake continues, but is stopped when PeaceWalker crosses the Rio San Juan River. Snake is picked up by a helicopter and returns to Mother Base. Snake and MSF learn from Huey that PeaceWalker's planned launch site is a U.S. base, and that the launch would happen at the same time as the SALT II treaty talks between the U.S. and Soviet Union. It's clear that the launch of PeaceWalker is meant to illustrate the U.S.'s nuclear capabilities to the USSR. A few days later, Snake infiltrates the base with MSF on standby to attack. Arriving in a security room, he finds Paz on one of the monitors. Paz tells Snake that Coleman is going to the comms tower to put in the final codes to launch PeaceWalker's nukes. PeaceWalker can only launch the nukes if it detects nukes being launched at the US. This makes it the perfect deterrent. The codes are false data that will cause PeaceWalker to retaliate even though there are no nukes being launched at the US. Snake fights his way to the comm tower. When he arrives, he finds Coleman and Paz, but someone else shows up. Ramon Galvez, the teacher. Galvez reveals that he was working with Coleman. Galvez is actually Vladimir Zadornov, and he works for the KGB. Galvez reveals that the troops inside the base are actually Soviet, and he is taking PeaceWalker to launch a nuke at Cuba to cause a war with the US and USSR. Galvez gives Paz a gun and demands she shoot Coleman. Paz is unable to bring herself to shoot Coleman, so Zadornov takes the gun and shoots Coleman himself, but not killing him.
Only fitting that retribution be delivered by a dead hand.
Suddenly, Amanda and the Sandinistas show up. They take control of the base, and Zadornov is captured by MSF. It is here that Amanda's soldiers finally accept her as their leader, and they all cheer for her. Coleman, Zadornov, and Paz are brought to Mother Base. Strangelove apologizes to Snake for torturing him, and explains that she just wanted to know the truth behind the boss's death by making the AI. She also suggests that Snake speak with the AI. Snake and Strangelove go to talk to PeaceWalker's AI. As Coleman is bleeding out in the helicopter, he puts in the activation codes for PeaceWalker. Once the codes are in, Coleman dies, doing his V for victory symbol. Coleman was the only one who knew the deactivation codes. PeaceWalker starts receiving false data about nukes being fired at the US. Because PeaceWalker is connected to the same system as the actual US nuclear detection system, the false data PeaceWalker receives is being sent to Washington. Snake must fight PeaceWalker. This fight was actually the hardest part of the game for me. Well, except for that door I couldn't get open in the mine lab. I was not able to beat PeaceWalker by myself in my first run. Thankfully, the PS3 PSN servers for PeaceWalker are still online for some reason, so I was able to get help from players online to beat PeaceWalker. Snake is able to cripple PeaceWalker, preventing it from firing the nukes. However, the false data is still being sent to Washington. Cutting to Washington, we see members of Congress and a representative for the Department of Defense arguing over the nuke alerts. They don't know that the nukes are fake, and they argue about firing nukes at the USSR. Because the president is at the SALT II negotiations, he is unable to make the decision to retaliate against the nukes. Snake is able to contact the officials by phone and convinces the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that the nukes are fake. Not all the officials believe Snake, and one pulls a gun and demands that the retaliatory nukes be launched. The mammal pod hatch opens, allowing for Snake to get inside to damage PeaceWalker's AI and stop the uplink. Snake manages to damage it enough that it begins to malfunction. It begins to sing in the voice of the boss before stepping into the nearby lake, drowning itself, stopping the nuke data from being sent to Washington. This concludes the battle. The US doesn't retaliate against the false nukes after they disappear from the system. This incident would go down in history in the world of Metal Gear as the PeaceWalker incident. Dr. Strangelove joins MSF as part of the research and development team, and Metal Gear Zeke is finished and fitted with a nuke as a deterrent for MSF's defense. A bit later, Snake has a conversation with Miller. Snake explains that he has found himself and wants to live a life different from the boss. Snake believes the boss betrayed him and everything she worked for by lowering her gun and sacrificing herself for her country. Snake finally accepts the title of Big Boss.
Now on, call me Big Boss.
Zadornov is thrown into a cell on Mother Base. Following Zadornov's multiple escapes, the last of which results in his death, Paz steals Zeke and reveals herself to be a spy for Cipher. She demands that Snake rejoin Cipher, or she will use Zeke to launch a nuke. Snake stops her, sending her falling into the ocean, presumably to her death. A final cutscene shows Snake and Miller announcing to their troops that MSF will be their outer heaven.
If the times demand it, we'll be revolutionaries, criminals, terrorists, and yes, we may all be headed straight to hell. But what better place for us than this? It is our only home, our heaven, and our hell. This is outer heaven.
Alright, so I know the title is PeaceWalker Story Explained, but I need to cover Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. So, MGS5 was split into two, Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain. Ground Zeroes is a direct follow-up to PeaceWalker, and covering it here will help with the flow of the Phantom Pain video. So, Ground Zeroes. 4 months after the PeaceWalker incident, Paz has resurfaced following her presumed death at the end of PeaceWalker. Being a Cipher spy and knowing MSF's nuclear capabilities, Snake is sent to recapture her. Paz is being held in Camp Omega, essentially Guantanamo Bay. Chico is also being held in Camp Omega due to a failed attempt to rescue Paz. As Snake goes to recover Paz and Chico, a nuclear weapons inspection of MSF is being conducted by the UN. Huey has Metal Gear Zeke and MSF's nuke placed on the seafloor and destroys all paper evidence. Snake infiltrates Camp Omega as Cipher's strike force, XOF, is being sent on an unknown mission departing from Camp Omega. Beginning by rescuing Chico, Snake discovers that while being interrogated by XOF, Chico had revealed the location of MSF's mother base. Snake brings Chico back to the helicopter before looking for Paz. Snake finds Paz by using an audio tape Chico had recorded. Following the rescue of Paz and return to the helicopter, Snake begins the flight back to MSF mother base. During the flight, a bomb is discovered to be planted on Paz. The bomb is quickly disposed of, and soon they arrive at mother base. But something's wrong. Communications to Mother Base are down. Black smoke is billowing around the base. Fires and explosions are everywhere, and parts of the base are sinking into the ocean. The pilot is able to spot Miller in the chaos, and they quickly land. The XOF strike force seen leaving Camp Omega is the group attacking the Mother Base. XOF is being led by a man only known as Skullface. Snake tries to fight them off, but the platform begins to collapse, and Snake is only able to save Miller, all their other soldiers dying in front of him.
Snake!
Snake and Miller watch as the outer heaven they built is destroyed right before their eyes. Miller explains that the UN's inspection of Mother Base was actually a cover for the XOF attack.
I heard explosions, then... They played us like a damn fiddle! Give it back! This isn't right, that was ours! We built it, damn it!
In a fit of rage, Miller shakes Paz, waking her up. She immediately freaks out, warning them about the bomb. When Snake explains they got rid of it, she reveals there was another bomb. She attempts to jump out of the helicopter to save everyone, but it's too late. The bomb goes off, destroying her. Causing the helicopter to crash into another helicopter nearby, killing Chico, a medic on board Snake's helicopter, and putting Snake into a coma. This is how Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes ends. The next Metal Gear Solid game will cover themes of race and revenge. Big Boss's story will conclude with a race to hell in Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain.